we're doing today is looking at equations. We're going to have a look at how to solve equations. This block is a little bit big. I got clearly a bit excited here. But basically what we need to remind ourselves of are some important rules when it comes to solving equations. And the most important thing that we have to take note of when we start solving equations is the fact that, very importantly, we need to be using inverse operations or opposite operations. And as we start to go through some examples, I will explain what this means. But again, we have done a whole course on this. So if you're feeling a bit confused, all of those videos are up there from the start of the term, so you can go and rewatch them. So importantly, inverse operations. And remember that we are solving for the unknown. Now that might seem quite self-explanatory, but it's important that we essentially get our variable alone. And what I mean by that is when you're solving an equation, we don't stop at 2x equals. We don't stop at negative x equals. We want x positive 1x or positive 1, whatever our variable is, all by itself so that we know what the value of that variable is. So it's really, really important that we do make sure we do that extra step if it's necessary. And again, as we do some examples, I'll point it out. All right, so guys, we know this stuff. Like I say, if you need to go back and rewatch the videos, absolutely, they're all online for you guys. But we're going to start just going through our equations, recapping, revising, making sure that we know what's going on. All right, so our first equation we have here is 5 equals negative x plus 8. Now, guys, remember I've said this to you before that just because I'm telling you to do it one way doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way to solve an equation. The reason I sort of give us step-by-step instructions is so that if we're not feeling super comfortable with equations or even with a certain topic, if we have those steps that we can follow, it means that hopefully we can get it right. So the steps are more a guide for those of us who maybe aren't feeling super comfortable with the topic of equations. If you can solve this using correct mathematics, I'm okay if your working out looks a little bit different to mine. All right, so if you think back to, and if you were here for our equations course, the very first thing that I always said we should do is we should get our variables to the left-hand side. LHS means left-hand side. I then said we should get our constants, so our numbers, to the right. So RHS means right-hand side. And then we are going to solve our equation. So if we do these 3 basic things, we should be able to solve our equation quite easily. Now, again, you don't have to get your variables to the left-hand side, and you don't have to get your constants to the right. But if we do these things, it's going to make it easier for us to solve this equation. So if we follow these 3 steps, the very first step tells me that I need to get my variable to the left-hand side. So what that means is I need to take this negative x, and it somehow needs to move itself across that equal sign. So some of you, I'm pretty sure it was this class, used the word transpose, and if it wasn't this class, I could just be mixing myself. But basically, we want to move it across the equal sign. Now, whenever we move terms across the equal sign, we need to remember to change their sign. And this is where inverse operations comes in. When we move terms over equal sign. Nope. Okay. Oh, come on. Sorry, guys. What's happening? Over the equal sign, we must remember our inverse operations. Okay, so this x term was originally negative, but now when I take it over to the left-hand side, it's going to become positive x. So when I do that, I'm going to have my 5, but now I've got plus x because I've moved it over the equal sign is equal to, and now all I have on the right-hand side is a positive 8. It's a bit thick, so let's just sort that out. All right, so that's me doing my first step. The second thing that I want to now get done is I want to get my constant to the right-hand side now. So that means that this 5 needs to join the 8 on the right-hand side. And exactly the same thing needs to happen. When I move terms across my equal sign, I need to remember to use my inverse operations. So now what I have on the left-hand side is my x. And on the right-hand side, I'm bringing the 5 to join the 8, but I have to change its sign. It was originally positive 5, and so now it's going to be minus 5. And so now I've got x is equal to an 8 minus 5 is 3. Now remember, I want a positive 1x all by itself. That's what I have. And so in this equation, I have managed to solve for x. Now grade 8s, remember when you are solving an equation, there is always a way to check yourself. And if you're going to check yourself, we use substitution. Okay? So basically what that means is we need to take this x value and we need to substitute it back into this original equation. So we would have 5 equals minus, and now we sub in our x value, so 3 plus 8. If we've got a negative 3, because minus 3 is negative 3 plus 8, we get 5 equals 5. And because my left-hand side is equal to my right-hand side, I can say that the answer I've gotten for x is correct. Okay, so whenever we're solving an equation, always remember that you can check yourself through substitution. On here, yes, exactly. This is exactly how we calculate the value of our unknown variable. Okay, so guys, essentially, if we can follow those 3 steps, we can solve any equation that we've been given. Right, now we have done this before, so what I want you guys to try is the second question over here. I'm just going to move it down a bit. Our second question here is 4x plus 8 equals 72. Again, we have done equations, so I have full confidence in all of you that you can do this. Give it a try. Remember your 3 steps. Remember your inverse operations. And let's see what value for x we get. In the chat, what I want to see is x equals your answer for the second equation. I'm just leaving the first one up in case you want to refer back to what we have done in terms of inverse operations, but I want you to try this. Once you have an answer, please remember to check your answer by substituting. And so guys, that's actually what's really nice about this section on equations is that you can always check your answer. So you should be getting 4 marks for equations because you can always double check what you've done. And so because we can double check, we should be getting at least 70 to 80% for our equation section. Obviously, some equations are quite tricky sometimes, especially if it's like a problem solving type of question. And then we do need to obviously be careful about what's going on. But for the most part, your basic equations, you should be getting 4 marks. Very nice, grade 8s. Right, would anyone like to raise their hand to explain how they solved this equation for me? Hey, Sinyane.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Okay, so first I said 72 minus 8 because of inverse operation, which is 64. Then I divided both 4x and 64 by 4.
Good.
And I got the answer 16.
Perfect. Okay, so guys, I hope you heard all of those beautiful inverse operations that Sinyane was using there. And like you were your English. And specifically, that idea of inverse operations is so important in order to solve our equation. Okay, so from our original equation that we had, we know that the very first thing that we want to do is we want to get, I'm explaining it now, so if you didn't get this answer, you need to listen. We need to put 8 on the right-hand side. We're going to get the constants to the right. And because of inverse operations, it became negative 8. So exactly as Nana said, 72 minus 8 gives us 64 on the right-hand side. The next thing that I need to do, remember guys, I want x alone, right? So if I grab a highlighter here, I only want to solve for x. I don't want to solve for 4x, I want to solve for x. Now what we need to remember is that 4x means 4 times x. So using my rule of inverse operations, the opposite of multiplication is division. And so if I want to get x alone, I now need to divide by 4. So what I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So if I'm going to divide 4x by 4, I also need to divide 64 by 4 and 64 by 4. 64 divided by 4 gives me 16. And so my value for x is 16. I'm just making a note here. What we do on one side of our equation, we must do on the other. Okay, now guys, if we go and double check ourselves, if we go and substitute, 4 times 16 is 64, plus 8 gives us 72. And so our value for x here is correct. And notice how I did that check in my head. So you don't have to write a check down like we did in the first question. You can do it in your head or quickly with a calculator. You don't need to show the check, but do the check so that you're making sure that you're getting full marks. All right, I'm just going to make this a touch smaller in case those of you didn't get a screenshot of the first question. So take your screenshots, guys. If anyone has any questions, now's the time to raise your hand and ask. Otherwise, we're going to have a look at another example. Now, so lots of x equals 16s on the chat, so very nicely done. Remember, as we're going through questions, make sure you're marking your work, checking where you might have gone wrong, checking that you've shown all the necessary steps in order to get your answer. Okay, nice, guys. Oh, sorry. So let's have a look at question 3. I'm going to do this one with you, and then I'll give you one to try by yourself. So this time we have a fraction. Okay, now again, like there's lots of ways to deal with these types of questions. You need to decide what you are more comfortable with. Now, personally, fractions for me, if we can get rid of the fraction as early as possible, let's just do it. All right. So let's first deal with the fraction. Now, fractions imply the operation division. So we have got division as our original operation. And so the inverse, there's a very weird looking arrow, the inverse of division is multiplication. So whenever we want to deal with a fraction or get rid of the fraction, we need to multiply. So every single term that I have here, so the fraction, the x, and the 4, all need to be multiplied by the denominator in order to get rid of the fraction. And this goes back to what we wrote here. What we do to one side of our equation, we must do to the other side. What we do to one term, we must do to all terms. Now, guys, the question might be, well, why am I timesing everything by 4? We times by whatever the denominator of our fraction is. And so because the denominator of our fraction is 4, I'm going to times everything by 4. Now, what that does is it cancels or gets rid of my fraction. but it makes sure that everything has still stayed balanced. Because remember, our equation must stay balanced. We can't just make up things on our equation. So the left-hand side is now just 3x plus 5 because I got rid of that fraction. But now what I need to remember is that I'm timesing the two terms on the right-hand side by 4. So x times 4 is 4x, and 4 times 4 is 16. So now on the right-hand side, I've got 4x plus 16. Now this is a much nicer equation to deal with. Okay, I go back to those first three basic steps that I had, get my x's to the left, constants to the right, solve my equation. So the very first thing that I'm going to do here is I am going to take this 4x and I want to get it over to the left-hand side. X is on the left. What that means is I need to apply my inverse operations, and so it now becomes minus 4x. I still have the plus 5 there, and now it's equal to just 16 because I've moved the 4x. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to take the plus 5 on the left and move it to the right. And again, remember, of course, to apply inverse operations. So I've got 3x minus 4x is equal to, let's just write that a bit neater. So it's equal to 16 minus 5, inverse operations. Now, guys, if you can go straight from the first step to the third step over here, that's fine. You don't have to do the inverse operations step by step. I'm more than okay with you going straight to that point. Right, what we're going to do is we're going to neaten up the left-hand side. Now, remember, guys, we're not looking for minus x. We're not looking for 2x. We're looking for just x alone. So 3x minus 4x is a negative 1x, or negative x, is equal to 16 minus 5, which is 11. Now again, the whole point of solving an equation is we want x alone. Oh, I don't know why this pen's been a nonsense tonight. So we want we want x alone. I'll write it down just now. What that means is I need to remember I've got that invisible, or that coefficient of negative 1 in front of my x, and I need to get rid of it. And I can do that by dividing both sides by negative 1. And when I do that, that means that I get rid of the negative in front of my x. And so what I get is that x is equal to negative 11. Now again, we can go and double check ourselves and make sure that we've got this correct. And what I do is I use substitution. My equation was, let's just make that a bit smaller so I can actually see the equation, was 3x plus 5 over 4 equals x plus 4. I'm going to substitute in my negative 11, so 3 times negative 11 plus 5 over 4 is equal to negative 11 plus 4. Now again, grade 8, you can do this on a calculator. I wouldn't write it all out. Negative 11 times 3 is negative 33 plus 5 over 4 is equal to minus 11 plus 4 is 7. Negative 7, so sorry. Negative 33 plus 5 is negative 28. Divided by 4 is equal to negative 7. And negative 28 divided by 4 is negative 7. Negative 7 is equal to negative 7. And so our answer here of x equals negative 11 is correct. And so we need to remember to do our check when solving our equation. All right, I'm just going to make that a touch smaller because that was a fair amount of information. So remember, guys, we're not solving for negative x, we're solving for positive x. We always want x alone. And that's what I've written in the red over here, which I'm just going to highlight. Because sometimes we do think we've solved the equation, oh, there's nothing more I need to do, but we need to remember we want x alone. And so if there is that negative in front, we need to get rid of it by dividing that negative away. All right, guys, any questions about this one with the fraction, please raise your hand and ask. Remember, you can always put on the chat as well. Otherwise, you're going to try one by yourselves now. Tiny?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
I'm so sorry to make you repeat this again, but where did we get the negative 11?
Okay, so the negative 11 has come from the second last step. Let's just grab a pen here. The second last step over here, I didn't want the negative 1 in front of the x, so I divided by negative 1 in order to get rid of it. But remember, if I'm going to divide the left by negative 1, I must divide the right by negative 1. And so positive 11 divided by negative 1 gives me the negative 11.
Oh, okay. All right.
That makes sense?
Okay. Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, good. So guys, the negative 11 comes from that really important statement of we want x alone. And so if we need to divide by a negative, that's fine, but we must remember to do that. Good question. Well done. Any others, grade 8? Okay, Swango, we don't really deal with get my words right. We don't really deal with x squareds in the way that you've presented it there. That's very much a more grade 9 type of equation. We are going to have a look at some equations where we do have exponents to deal with, but the type of equation you've typed there is not an equation we deal with in grade 8. Okay, guys. So what I want you to try here is question 4, and then we will take a little brain break. And then, like I've just said, we are going to have a look at some equations as well where there are exponents that we need to deal with. So you'll see what type of exponential equations you do need to be able to deal with in a few minutes. But let's try this question 4 over here. Okay, so you're trying question 4 by yourselves. Let's see what we get. Starting to see some answers. Good, let's keep them coming. And guys, remember, once you do have an answer, please check it for me. Make sure that you agree with your own answer. Again, grade 8, let's double check our answers. I can tell you now the answer is not 2. So let's double check our answers, please. I'm give you 60 seconds, and then we're going to have a look at the answer, or how to do the answer rather. Remember, we can always check through substitution. That is our guaranteed way to know whether or not we've done this answer correctly. All right, let's have a look. Okay, so remember, like I say, let's just deal with the fraction first. Let's get rid of it, and then we don't have to stress about it. So remember, I always times by whatever my denominator is. In this case, it's 2. So every single term that I have here is going to be multiplied by 2. So the fraction is times by 2, the negative 3 by 2, and the 2 on the right-hand side by 2. For the fraction, that gets rid of the denominator. So I'm just left with 3x, oopsie daisies, 3x plus 1, but negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, and 2 times 2 is 4. Now on the left-hand side, that positive 1 minus 6, I can simplify. So let's do that because it makes our lives a lot easier. So 1 minus 6 is negative 5 is equal to 4. So the first thing that I want to do here is I want to take this negative 5 and let it come over to the right-hand side. And so I need to remember my inverse operations. So I've got 3x is equal to 4 plus 5. Remember, the minus becomes a plus. That means on the right-hand side, I've got 4 plus 5, which is 9. And very similar to what we had in this last question where we had a coefficient, as well as in question 2 where we had the coefficient of 4x, I need to remember that what I want is x alone. And so that therefore means that I need to divide both sides by 3. I want to get rid of that 3 in front of the x, and so I need to divide it away. Now 9 divided by 3 is 3, and so x is equal to 3. Now again, remember, you can do your check, make sure that you've done it correctly. I just want to do a quick check so that we can make sure. 3x plus 1 over 2 minus 3 equals 2. If I sub in my answer, 3 times 3 plus 1 over 2 minus 3. Now 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1. And we know that 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 divided by 2 minus 3 equals 2. Now 10 divided by 2 is 5. And we know that 5 minus 3 is 2. And so 2 is equal to 2. Guys, if this had been, or if we had checked the answer a lot of you were given as 2, 3 times 2 is then 6 plus 1. And 6 plus 1 is 7. Now 7 over 2 is 3.5. So 3.5 minus 3 gives us a half, not that answer of 2. And that's why I'm saying double check yourself. If you had checked the answer of 2 that a lot of you were putting on the chat, you would have seen that it wasn't correct. And then you could have gone back and double checked your work to see where you might have gone wrong. So always double check your work. That's through substitution. It will tell you whether or not you have done something wrong or if you got it right. Okay, let's take a screenshot. If anyone has any questions about this question 4 and has the time to raise your hand. Otherwise, like I say, we're going to take a little brain break. Tatenda?
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
The answer I got is correct, but I didn't do it the same way as you did.
What did you do?
I first substitute inverse operation of minus 3 to the other side. It gave me 2 plus 3 equals to 5.
Yeah.
And then 3x plus 1 over 2 equals to 5. And
That's
then I
fine.
multiplied times 2 equals to 10.
Perfect.
And then the plus 1. Inverse operation minus 1 and says 3x equals to 9. And then 3x over 3 and 9 over 3 equals to 3.
Perfect. That's absolutely fine. That's actually how I would have solved it as well. But just because we had said, let's deal with the fraction first, that's what I chose to do. And to Tatenda, this actually goes back to, guys, there are different ways to solve this equation. So Tatenda's way is 100% correct. So if you did it that way, where you first did the inverse operations of the minus 3 to a plus 3 on the right, 100% correct. All right. So sometimes our methods do look a bit different, but as long as you've mathematically done everything properly, absolutely. So well done, Tatenda. Alrighty, guys. So well done. Let us have a look at our brain break here. How much I'm showing here? Probably not enough. There we go. Right, so guys, let's have a look at our brain break. I just want to, sorry, I'm causing my own chaos. in life. So here's our brain break. Remember, brain break, we are trying to solve essentially for the very last equation. And guys, it's exactly what I've just said. It's an equation. Because we're solving equations in this lesson, this should be hopefully super easy because it's basically what we've been doing just now with some books rather than variables. So we're getting that last one. You've got your math stroke for the day. Let's see what we get. I need to get an answer here as well. Righto. Let's see if you can beat me to it. Oh, glad you guys are enjoying the joke. Hey, we're waiting for the correct answer there of the math 24. The brain break there on the chat. I'm just gonna make the brain break a touch bigger because you need to be careful of when there's 2 books and where there's only 1. I'll give you another 2 minutes on the brain break, otherwise we are gonna move on. And like I say, guys, this is solving an equation. Nice, Nyane, very nicely done. So Nyane, would you like to raise your hand to explain it for us? Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Okay, so first I said 36 divided by 3, which is 12.
Ooh.
And then for the second one, I wasn't sure, so I just guessed.
Okay.
And it turned out to be right. So I don't know how you did that one. And then the third one, it's
What
one
were the
book
orange
instead of
books?
the answer turned out to be 18.
Good. I'll explain
Then
how we
in
could
the
do
third
this.
one, okay. And then in the third one, it's one book instead of 2. So 18 divided by 2, which is 9. So 9
Good.
times 9 is 81. And 89 minus 81 is 8.
Good.
Then I said 8 plus 12 times 18, which is 224.
Perfect. And what do we need to remember to do first in the last step? The times or the plus?
The plus.
The
No, I
times.
forgot the times.
Oh, you're right. Good.
The
Don't doubt
times.
yourself. So guys, we multiply
Okay.
first, God mass, which is 216, plus the 8 that Sinyane gave us, which gives us the 224. Okay, so Sinyane said for equation number 2, we just guessed. And honestly, I just guessed as well, because sometimes I forget that this is actually just an equation. But let's say we didn't guess, okay? Let's say what we did is we assigned a variable to these books. So let's say I said the orange book was X. So we've got X plus X times 12. Now, X times 12 we know is 12X. And then we've got our plus X equals 234. Now, we know that X plus 12X are like terms. And so what we actually have in this equation is 13x equals 234, and we can solve for x. 234 divided by 13 gives us an x value of 18. And so that's how we can get that each of these orange books here was 18, exactly as Sanyane said. Okay, so we can use the concept of solving an equation for these brain break type of scenarios. They're very nicely done, Sanyane. Like I say, I guess the second one as well. I forget that we can just make an equation sometimes. Okay, grade 8, very, very nice. Let's have a look at a couple more equation examples for the evening. We have so much space. Alrighty. So the next sort of scenario within equations that we need to be able to deal with is when we have brackets and therefore when we need to start distributing. Okay, so if we have a look here, when we've got brackets, we want to distribute. Now distribute means times. So when we have brackets, we must distribute. And that means I need to figure out what the coefficient of each bracket is in order to multiply it in. So I'm going to take this -2 and multiply it into the first bracket. And on the right-hand side, the 3 is going to be multiplied into the bracket. So when I distribute, I end up with -2 times x, which is -2x. -2 times -5. Now, negative times a negative is a positive, and 2 times 5 is 10. So positive 10 is equal to 3 times x, which is 3x, and 3 times -4, which is -12, minus 3. So I always need to distribute first. I can now neaten up the right-hand side. So -2x plus 10 stays on the left. 3x minus 12 minus 3 gives me 3x minus 15. Because I had those like terms there, I just subtracted them because it makes life a lot easier. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I was doing earlier. Get all of my x terms to the left-hand side. Get my constant terms to the right-hand side, and I'm going to solve. So when I bring the x term over, remember your inverse operations, I'm going to have -2x minus 3x plus 10 is equal to -15. And then I'm going to bring that positive 10 over, becoming -10. So on the left-hand side, I've got -2x minus 3x is equal to -15 minus 10. Now, -2x minus 3x gives me -5x, and -15 minus another 10 gives us -25. Now it's 12, not 15. Guys, it is 15, so 3 times -4 is -12, and then I've still got that -3, and -12 minus 3 gives us -15. I hope that makes sense. So it is -15. So we've got the -15 minus 10, which is -25. Now remember, I don't want -5x, I just want x. So I'm going to divide both sides by -5. Now a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so that leaves me with positive 1x. -25 divided by -5 is a positive. 25 divided by 5 is 5. And so x is equal to positive 5. So whenever we've got brackets, we need to distribute them first. And once we've distributed, we then just solve our equation as we usually would. Okay, so some of you are saying I made a mistake. I'm hoping we've all seen that I didn't. So the mistake that we were concerned about was this -15. -12 minus 3 does give me -15. So I've just added the like terms there. Alrighty, grade 8, any questions? We can raise our hands. Otherwise, you're going to try one by yourselves. We all okay? Any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to give you one to try. Alrighty, good. Okay, so guys, I want you to try question 2. Only thing I'm going to say here is please remember that when you've got that minus sign sitting in front of a bracket, remember there is that invisible 1. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take that negative 1, and that is what we are distributing into our bracket here. So just be careful of what your coefficient is in the equation. Trying this one by yourself, I've given you quite an important hint, so hopefully we were listening. Otherwise, look at the screen and let's give it a try. Let's see what we get for x.
Wow, today's me who sees a blank screen and can't see any sum at all. But it's not blank. I can still see your screen. It's just I don't see the sum that we are doing on my screen. So which is amazing because the kids can see.
I'm just going to reshare just in case.
Okay, now I can see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Wonder. They could see because I mean, for me it was just white board, but there was no sum.
That's so weird.
Yeah, no, really weird.
Guys, remember when you get an answer, double check, use substitution to check. Remember, I have just reshared my screen, so if you are struggling to see, you need to log out and log back in, or you need to unpin and then repin my video. If you're still struggling, please let us know, but I have just reshared, so that should not be a problem. So try logging out and logging back in, or unpinning and then repinning my video. Yo, guys, problems tonight. Okay, I'm resharing one more time. If you still can't see, I've given you options. Please do one of them.
Yeah, it could be network also. So just try to log out and in again if you can't see this time.
Okay, you should all be able to see. If you can't log out, log back in, or unpin, repin. Okay, guys, we're getting a bit of a mixed bag of answers here. I'm going to give you one more minute. I hope we're checking those answers. Okay, let's have a look. So I've told you what you need to distribute. This first one right at the start is going to stay there. We're going to distribute first. So negative 1 times x is negative x, and negative 1 times positive 2 is negative 2. That's what I have on my left-hand side, and now I can start solving my equation. So this 2x is going to come over to the left, so I've got minus x minus 2x plus 1 minus 2 is equal to 4. Obviously, if you'd said 1 minus 2 first, that's absolutely fine. But if I neaten up the left-hand side, minus x minus 2x is minus 3x. Positive 1 minus 2 is negative 1 is equal to 4. So the 1, or negative 1 rather, now needs to move over to the right. So it's going to become positive 1. So negative 3x equals 4 plus 1. And we all know that 4 plus 1 is 5. And now, guys, remember, I don't want negative 3x. I just want x. So I need to divide by negative 3 on both sides in order to get that x alone. And so what we end up with, x is equal to, now positive 5 divided by negative 3 is a negative 5 over 3. So our answer there should have been a fraction. And grade 8's fractions are absolutely fine to get. There is no problem with fractions. Again, double check your answer through substitution. Put it in on your calculator and make sure that your left is equal to the right.